The slain theocracy. For over 600 years this nation has endured and protected humanity in a hostile world filled with deadly predators and civilizations that see humans as nothing more than slaves in the best of and as mere game in the worst of circumstances. And one of the reasons why the state had managed to endure was due to their living weapons, beings with the blood of their 6 great deities flowing through their veins. Godkins. And the last century of the theocracy was marked by the birth of the strongest of Godkins, Zesshi Zetsumei, and the war that the circumstances of her conception had caused. After Zeshi's mother, the former secret ace of the Black Scripture, was abducted and violated by the king of the elven country, she was rescued and gave birth to Zesshi. Until this point, the Elven Kingdom and the slain theocracy had been on friendly terms with another, so despite the theocracy's humanocentric worldview, both nations coexisted peacefully. But blinded by the potential power of his offspring, the Elven King abducted Zeshi's mother and therefore caused a brutal war with their former allies. A war that led to great suffering among the elves, since females were drafted and sent to the front line, in the hope of awakening secret powers within them, and thereby qualifying as mates for the Elf King. The theocracy, shocked by the betrayal and hungry for vengeance, waged this war with brutal efficiency, preferring a slow, grinding battle of attrition and turning captured elves into slaves, who are then sold to the highest bidder in order to help finance the war efforts. So even before she was born, Zeshi's life was the result of the Elf King's lust for even greater might, and due to her existence being the result of and centered around the lust for power, Zesshi, more than any other Godkin, came to fetishize power itself, even wanting a male to defeat and impregnate her in order to give birth to even stronger offspring. Part of the leadership of the theocracy admitted that it was a mistake to separate her early from her mother, who would have undoubtedly been horrified to hear how her daughter thinks about power. The circumstances of her conception also led Zesshi to be ashamed of her elven heritage. Part of her elaborate hairstyle is due to her efforts to hide her longer than normal ears. Undoubtedly she would be ashamed if her fellow teammates would see them. Her rejection of her elven side also indicates that she would like to take revenge on the Elf King who violated her mother, and on the elves in general, simply for being his subjects. But despite this desire, she, at least so far, wasn't deployed against any elven troops, simply out of fear that the remaining Dragon Lords would retaliate against the slain theocracy for using the Yggdrasilian equivalent of a nuclear weapon. Remember, in this world might makes right. Strength is everything, and without it, you're nothing. And Zesshi in a sense is the strongest warrior of mankind, the overlord of the new world. Anything short of a true Dragon Lord is likely unable to defeat her. As such, she became a fighter without an adversary or a challenge. And this state has gone on for decades, maybe even a century. And during this time of effortless victory, she grew bored, distant, and affluent over anything except the possibility of a strong opponent. After the captain of the Black Scripture had lost to Shaltir in her leech form, Zesshi was shortly hoping that she finally could taste defeat, only to lose all interest once the captain assured her that the vampire is still weaker than her and would likely lose. During this conversation, the captain of the Black Scripture also told her that fellow Black Scripture members had been killed, and that among them were Kyra, the old woman who wielded Downfall of Castle and Country, a world-class item. Undoubtedly, the theocracy's power had declined rather severely, at least until another user could be found, either among the ranks of the Black Scripture, its former members, or from the vast pool of recruits the theocracy could draw upon. But still, until a suitable replacement could be found, and trained to use the item to its full potential in a combined effort together with the other scripture members, the theocracy became more vulnerable to enemy incursions. And despite this, and despite the loss of 2 comrades she likely had known for years or even decades, Zesshi never displayed any shock or grief about the death of her teammates. For her, it's nothing new, because Zesshi, despite her youthful look, is old. Older than any of the Cardinals, or the former wielder of Downfall of Castle and Country. So probably over the years and decades, Zesshi received dozens of similar messages from different Godkins and scripture members, whom she saw growing up, losing to her, taking over the leadership of, or a position in the scripture, and either dying in combat or growing old until they retire due to being unfit to meet the high demands. During Zeshi's lifetime, probably hundreds of Black Scripture members were victorious, defeated, maimed, killed, or otherwise involved in challenging combat, all while she stood guard, playing with the toys of her ancestors. In stark contrast to this, the biggest challenge she currently faces is solving the Rubik's Cube, which she still can't figure out. And so far, she only managed to solve one side. This toy of her divine ancestors is also a nice metaphor for the fact that despite her age and power, she still hasn't figured out how to deal with all of it, aside from reacting like an affluent teenager or a power-hungry maniac. And likewise, any invader would be nothing more than a boring chore. The only difference between a normal teenager doing homework and Zesshi defeating a large-scale demi-human or heteromorph incursion, fit to wipe out kingdom and empire combined, is how the outside world would react to it. For Zesshi, one is likely as boring as the other. No challenge, no excitement, just boring routine. So in a sense, Zesshi is Overlord's Saitama, a one-swing girl bored with her enemies to the point of indifference, but with the still lingering hope in the back of her head that maybe, someday, someone stronger will appear. But this is Overlord, and as mentioned, Zesshi developed a very unhealthy relationship to strength and power. In contrast to Saitama's normal outlook on the world, Zeshi's mindset is a more dark and realistic approach to being defined by overwhelming might. And while she might be undefeated in battle, she's not in great mental shape. She just didn't possess the mental fortitude to be not affected by her upbringing and her surrounding. And therefore, she reflects it. She's an echo of the new world, which also raises the question of how her story might end. Will she be another archer? Or is there something more to her story? Maybe, just maybe, and this is just me theorizing here, Zeshi's the logical conclusion to a running gag. While the Twin Floor Guardians were in part created as a joke against her little brother, Aura Bellafiora has a part of her creator's personality imprinted on her, and Buku Buku was described as a rather tomboyish elder sister, and maybe instead of a love affair with anyone or anything stronger than her, Zesshi might end up befriending Aura, after revealing the secrets of the slain theocracy, thereby giving Ainz the ability to avenge Shaltier's death and her being put under mind control. Zesshi might find herself on the good side of Ainz old gown. And to Aura, Shaltier is akin to her little sister and her best friend. So once Zesshi enables revenge, she could become friends with Aura, and after discovering that she's a she, Zesshi might be guided by her, and together the two might kill off the Elf King and the Theocracy, who were responsible for Zeshi's life being so focused around power. And I believe this would be a fitting ending for this character. Alternatively, Zesshi will be killed or captured and experience the lifelong torture of having her skin peeled off several times a day in order to turn it into high-quality scrolls on Demiurge's happy farm. I mean, it's Overlord. And a happy end is never certain, and that's why I'm quite curious how her story will end. And speaking of it, let me wrap up this lore video series. While a non-awakened Godkin might not even know that he or she is something special and downright main protagonist material, the awakened Godkins are in command of powers beyond humanity's reach, and they are army-ending weapons, protectors of their kind, and a deterrent for any attacks, or depending on the circumstances, an instrument of vengeance. On a personal level, they might found or destroy nations, shape the course of history, and also run the risk of either becoming incredible, arrogant and blinded by their power, or bored, affluent and disengaged, simply turning indifferent about the world and the people around them. But one thing is certain, with personal combat strength being their defining attribute, their entire life will be focused around it, for they are Godkins. They are living weapons and living relicts. And with that I will end this video. Thank you for watching, have a nice day, over and out.